On August 10, 1628, the Swedish king watched in horror as his brand new warship, the most powerful in the world, sank in Stockholm harbor. It had sailed for less than 15 minutes. 30 people died trapped inside. But here's what nobody could have predicted. Those 30 bodies, preserved in the cold Baltic waters for over 3 centuries, would one day help doctors understand heart disease, cancer, and even the effects of stress on the human body. This is the strange, unlikely story of how a catastrophic engineering failure accidentally revolutionized modern medicine. The Vasa was meant to be Sweden's golden ticket to naval supremacy. King Gustavus Adolphus was fighting the 30 Years' War, and he needed a ship that would strike fear into enemies. The Vasa was that ship, or it was supposed to be. 64 cannons spread across 2 gun decks, ornate carvings covering every surface, a hull painted in red and gold. This wasn't just a war machine, it was a floating palace designed to announce Swedish power to the world. But there was a fatal problem. The ship was top-heavy, way too top-heavy. The king had demanded more cannons than the hull could support, and the shipbuilders, rushing to meet deadlines, afraid to question royal authority, built it anyway. When the Vasa finally launched on that summer afternoon, a light breeze caught its sails. The ship tilted to the left. Water rushed in through the open gun ports. Within minutes, it was gone, sinking to the bottom of the harbor just 120 meters from shore. The king was humiliated, the captain was blamed, and then, for the most part, everyone tried to forget it had happened. The Vasa sat at the bottom of Stockholm harbor for 333 years. But while humans moved on, something remarkable was happening underwater. The Baltic Sea is strange, it's cold, dark, and most importantly, it has almost no oxygen below a certain depth. That means the organisms that normally decompose organic material can't survive there. The Vasa and the people inside it were essentially pickled. When the ship was finally raised in 1961, archaeologists expected to find a historical treasure. What they got was something no one had anticipated. The cold, low-oxygen environment had preserved the crew's bodies with extraordinary detail. We're talking hair still attached to scalps, internal organs intact, even the contents of their stomachs preserved well enough to analyze. For medical researchers, this wasn't just an archaeological find. It was a time capsule of human health from 400 years ago. Let's talk about why this matters so much. When scientists study disease today, they're looking at modern humans living in modern conditions. We eat processed foods. We take antibiotics. We're exposed to industrial pollution. We live mostly sedentary lives. But to really understand human health, to know which diseases are caused by modern lifestyle and which are just part of being human, you need a control group. You need to see what humans were like before all of this. The Vasa crew provided exactly that. Here were people who had never eaten processed sugar, never taken antibiotics, never been exposed to car exhaust or microplastics. They were active, working-class men from the 17th century. And their preserved bodies allowed scientists to ask questions that had never been answerable before. The first major discovery involved atherosclerosis, the hardening of arteries that leads to heart attacks and strokes. Modern medicine had long assumed this was a disease of civilization, caused by fatty diets and sedentary lifestyles. But when researchers examined the arteries of the Vasa sailors, they found the same plaque buildup we see today. Some of these men, who were probably in their 30s and 40s, already had early signs of heart disease. This finding changed how doctors think about cardiovascular health. It turns out that atherosclerosis isn't purely modern, it's partially baked into human biology, possibly related to inflammation and genetics in ways we're still trying to understand. Then there was the dental research. When scientists analyzed the sailors' teeth, they found remarkably little tooth decay. This wasn't because they brushed 17th century Swedes didn't, but because their diet contained almost no sugar. But here's the twist. They had massive amounts of dental wear and gum disease. Their teeth were worn down from grinding grain in stone mills, which left abrasive particles in their bread. And gum disease was rampant, probably caused by poor oral hygiene. This combination, low decay but high wear and infection, gave dentists new insights into how different factors affect oral health. It helped clarify that sugar is the primary driver of cavities, not plaque alone. The stomach contents were another goldmine. Scientists could actually identify what these men had eaten in their final hours: grain porridge, dried fruit, salted meat. This wasn't just trivia, it helped historians understand 17th century nutrition, but it also gave medical researchers concrete data about pre-industrial diets. The sailors showed signs of nutritional deficiencies we rarely see today, including evidence of scurvy in some cases, but they also lacked signs of metabolic diseases like type 2 diabetes, which is now epidemic. This provided some of the clearest evidence yet for how dramatically our relationship with food has changed in 4 centuries. Perhaps most surprisingly, the Vasa crew offered insights into cancer. When researchers examined the preserved tissues, they found very few signs of malignancies. This doesn't mean cancer didn't exist. People didn't live as long back then, so many cancers never had time to develop. But the near absence of tumors, combined with other historical data, has contributed to our understanding of how environmental factors drive cancer rates. Modern humans are exposed to carcinogens that simply didn't exist in the 17th century, and our cancer rates reflect that. There was also something unexpectedly moving about the discoveries. One skeleton was found with a carefully carved wooden shot mold tucked into his pocket, a tool used for making musket balls. Another had a small leather purse containing a few coins. These weren't just research subjects, they were people with jobs, possessions, probably families waiting for them. The preservation was so complete that researchers could even identify one sailor who had an old, healed leg fracture. He'd broken his leg years before the sinking and walked with a limp. We know this because the bone had healed poorly, leaving a permanent deformity. It's a small detail, but it humanizes these people in a way that statistics never could. The preservation also revealed how hard these men's lives had been. Their bones showed the marks of constant physical labor. Many had arthritis in their spines and joints. Some had healed injuries that had never been properly treated. These were working men whose bodies showed every year of hard use. For modern doctors, this provided valuable data about how the human skeleton responds to different types of stress over a lifetime. Here's something most people don't know. The techniques developed to study the Vasa bodies became foundational for modern forensic science. The researchers had to invent new methods for preserving and analyzing soft tissue that had been underwater for centuries. Those methods are now used by archaeologists and forensic investigators around the world. When a body is recovered after years in water, forensic teams use protocols that were pioneered on the Vasa crew. The Shipwreck literally wrote the textbook on aquatic decomposition and preservation. The Vasa project also advanced our understanding of how bones record life history. By studying the chemical composition of the sailors' bones and teeth, scientists could tell where they had grown up, what kind of water they had drunk, and how their diets had changed over time. This technique, called stable isotope analysis, has become crucial not just for archaeology, but for modern applications like solving cold cases and identifying remains from mass disasters. And the medical insights keep coming. As recently as 2020, researchers were still publishing new findings based on the Vasa remains. Advanced imaging techniques that didn't exist in the 1960s have revealed details about the sailors' health that earlier researchers missed. We now know, for instance, that some of the crew showed signs of tuberculosis, a disease that was epidemic in 17th century Europe but is relatively rare today in developed countries. This helps epidemiologists understand how infectious diseases spread through dense, pre-modern populations. There's a deeper lesson here about the nature of scientific progress. We tend to think of breakthroughs as intentional, the result of brilliant people asking the right questions and designing careful experiments. And sometimes that's true. But just as often, progress comes from accidents, failures, and strange coincidences. The Vasa was a catastrophe. 30 people died. A king's dreams of naval dominance literally sank in front of his eyes. And yet, 4 centuries later, that same disaster is saving lives through medical research. It's worth noting that the Vasa's medical contributions weren't planned. When the ship was raised, nobody was thinking about heart disease or cancer research. They wanted historical artifacts, cannons, carvings, documents. The human remains were almost an afterthought. But good science means being open to unexpected opportunities. It means recognizing that a preserved 16th century body isn't just an archaeological curiosity, it's a source of medical data that can't be found anywhere else. The Vasa also reminds us how much we still don't know about human health. Every new analysis technique reveals something previously invisible. The sailors' preserved tissue samples are now stored in climate-controlled facilities, waiting for researchers to invent the next generation of analysis tools. In 50 years, scientists may be learning things from these bodies that we can't even imagine today. A 400-year-old tragedy keeps giving us new knowledge because we keep finding new ways to ask questions. There's something poetic about this. The Vasa was built to project Swedish power. It was supposed to be a weapon of war. Instead, it became one of the most valuable scientific resources in the world. Those 30 sailors, whose lives were cut short by a bureaucratic disaster, ended up teaching us more about human health than most doctors learn in a lifetime. They didn't choose this role, they were victims of poor planning and royal ego. But their accidental legacy has helped millions of people understand their own bodies better. Today, the Vasa sits in a specially built museum in Stockholm, one of the most visited attractions in Scandinavia. Tourists come to see the magnificent ship, to marvel at its size and beauty. Most of them don't realize that this same vessel is still contributing to medical research. The story they're told is about naval history, about Swedish kings and 17th century warfare. But the real story, the deeper story, is about how failure can become success, how the past can illuminate the present, and how even the worst disasters can leave something valuable behind. So the next time you hear about a medical breakthrough involving heart disease or bone health or cancer research, remember the Vasa. Remember that some of our most important knowledge comes from strange, unexpected places. And remember those 30 sailors who, without ever intending to, became teachers to the modern world. Their ships sank in minutes, but their contribution to science has lasted for centuries, and it's not over yet.